I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Bunurong people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
For me, whenever I start with a new gin, I start with a concept. I then get all of the different flavours that I think might work. I start putting them together and trialling them in different recipes. And then when I feel like it's got the right balance, that's when I think it's ready to release to market.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Holly Klintworth is the Managing Director and Head Distiller of family-owned and operated Bass and Flinders Distillery. She is a leader of the Australian spirits industry and second-generation distiller of the renowned Mornington Peninsula business, and I'm thrilled to have her join me. Hey, Holly.
Hello. Very nice to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice, especially as we don't kind of cross paths all that often, but it's wonderful to have you on and hear more about how you fit in, 48 hours into your 24-hour days, because you're a very busy woman. Let's go back and tell me a little bit about being a second-generation distiller, because there's not a lot of people that can claim that in Australia.
Yes, that's true. There's a handful of second-generation distillers, I think. So my late father, Wayne, he started our family distillery, Bass and Flinders, in 2009, so over 15 years ago now. And at that time, I definitely didn't see a future for myself in distilling and in the industry at all. And also at that time, Dad's dream was really just to, it was a hobby for him initially, but his dream was to establish a distillery and take on and rival the French and make great Australian brandy, or make Australian brandy great again. But he was very determined to kind of go this on his own, and made it very clear, this is my thing. Family's not getting involved. And so I kind of watched on with interest, and my career path at that point, I was in marketing for a wine company. So he would come to me and he'd say, Holly, what do you think about this label design? And I'd be like, well, Dad, I think that the words are a bit hard to read and maybe you can make this a bit bigger. And he'd be like, oh, too late, I've already printed 1,000 of them. So he was kind of interested in my opinion, but not really. But over the years, my family would chip in, and we'd come to the distillery and we'd be zesting lemons for the limoncello with him, and bottling masterclass bottles of gin on the weekends, and that was usually my mum's job. And so it was around 2016 that the business just got a little bit too big for Dad to handle, and we made the decision for me to step in and start to kind of have him mentor me, with the intention of me taking over the running of the business from him. So it was a little bit left to center for me, definitely, especially the distillation side of things. I'm much more of a creative brain and much less of a science and mathematical brain, which is what you kind of need in the distilling world. But I've learnt to kind of expand my mind and pick up all the different things when it comes to running the business.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's interesting because I've actually met quite a few father and daughter teams in the spirits world in the last few years. But what kind of made you come around? Was it that you slowly started to enjoy it the more you were doing it? Did you feel more capable the more you learnt? When were you thinking, actually, I really enjoy this?
Yeah, look, I think Dad was wonderful. He really set me up for success. And he said to me right from the very start, he's like, Holly, I've set up this distillery so that one person, whether they're a man or a woman, can do everything themselves. And he just kind of showed me everything. He said, don't ever let a man tell you that you can't do these things. You're just as capable as anyone else. And he really gave me the confidence. And I think that, coupled with working so closely with him and witnessing his sheer passion and his drive, and the more time I spent with him asking him questions about his vision for the business and his vision for brandy, I guess that was quite infectious for me, and really kind of, I think I took on his passion and his goals and his dreams for the business, and that then I absorbed that as my own.
Incredible. I mean, wonderful that your dad kind of had that single mind to say, one person kind of operate that. I think that's pretty incredible, because when you have ambitions and you want to do lots of things, but you have limited resources or whatever, it's interesting to kind of see it from that perspective. Brandy production in Australia goes way back, but tell us a little bit about kind of how you went on your career path. You went over to cognac for a little bit as well, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. So I was determined to get myself over to cognac one way or another. And I did apply for a bunch of different grants and a bunch of different opportunities. And the one that I was successful in was the Churchill Fellowship. So that was a 6-week internship experience that I got myself, which took me over to France. I had the pleasure of working alongside 4 different cognac producers. So Mary Melrose, Jean-Luc Pasquet, Courvoisier, and also the guys that sold their distillery to Courvoisier called Domaine Guillotot. And the time there was really about immersing myself in the industry, and it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think when you love what you do and you're passionate about brandy, to then take yourself over to a whole town where the entire city is based around this product, this spirit, their love of this spirit. Everyone you talk to knows someone who's working in the industry, whether they're in the glass manufacturing or the corks or the yeast or the barrels. And every distiller I spoke to loved what they did and 100% believed that their way of doing things was the right way. And I think the thing that really struck me while I was over there was that, before I went, people were like, oh, how do you think it's going to go? Do you think the French are really going to give you all their secrets? And I was like, well, let's find out. And I got there and I realized that all the distillers they see themselves as farmers. They grow their own grapes. They're vignerons, they're distillers, they're everything. And so down to earth and open with their knowledge and willing to share. And I think, interestingly, cognac has a similar problem to Australia when it comes to brandy. In Australia, we kind of see brandy as something that our grandmother drinks. And, when people say that to me, I say, well, your grandmother has great taste.
I love it.
But, there was a bit of a fashion crisis around brandy, probably from the 1960s, 1970s and onwards. And people don't drink it as much anymore. Same in cognac, I think it's something like 97% of all cognac is actually exported. So, they were really excited that someone else was wanting to help grow the brandy industry globally, and they were willing to support me on that journey and share their knowledge with me. So yeah, really, really special experience, and I learned a lot. I think learning from Dad, I think some of the challenges of working with family, sometimes you ask them questions and they don't give you full answers. They just say, just do it. Be like, Dad, why do you distill this way? It's just the way we do it. But you go to cognac and they're like, well, here's all the technical knowledge that we've learned over the last 100 years, and this is why we do things. So I really had this thirst for knowledge that was very much quenched when I was over there. I took that knowledge back, and I wrote a paper to share with the Australian industry. So that's online. And really, my intention was to bring that knowledge back, share it, and hope that as an industry of brandy producers, which is very much in its infancy, we can focus on quality and we can focus on putting some of the very best of Australian brandy out to the world.
I love that your experience in France was like that, and you do hear that quite a lot in wine. But I wasn't sure about into somewhere like cognac, which you would kind of think. I imagine that there was a bit more guarded secrets based around on brands and the competitive nature of that. But I love the fact that you've gone over there and come back and then done the exact same thing by putting everything you learned into a paper for everybody else to read. It really goes to show your generous spirit, but also that you want Australia to, to rise in quality for everybody. And I just think that says a lot about you, but it also it's that extension of the sharing of knowledge. And as you know, with different brands from different places, there's always going to be a point of difference. It doesn't necessarily have to hold all the secrets to you, because you'll be making your products from different products that are in different places of the world. So very, very cool. Tell me a little bit about how the range has kind of evolved over the time. Brandy was obviously always going to be something really important to you guys, but you have an incredible range of gins and tinnies. And I mean, if you want it, it's there somewhere. There's some really beautiful products. So where did it start, the brand, and then how has it evolved?
Yeah, yep. And, you're right. We have a very broad range of products, and I guess there's two schools of thought there. There's some people, some brand owners of spirits who believe that you should just have a sole focus, and then there's us and others like us that do gins, brandies, liqueurs, everything. I guess the thread that ties all of our products together is the fact that it's a grape to glass product. And because we started out being or aspiring to be a brandy distillery, the way we process our spirit and the way we actually produce our spirit from scratch by distilling wine into spirit, that spirit is what we call eau de vie. That's a very unique process, especially in the gin world, where majority of distillers buy in the neutral ethanol and distill that and vapor infuse that with their botanicals, which is very normal. So the thread tying everything together for us is that we use our grape-based eau de vie that we've distilled from scratch as that base spirit for our gins and obviously our brandy and our liqueurs. So like many distilleries, when they set out to produce a dark spirit and it needs to age for a minimum 2 years in oak, we were the same. So we started with distilling wine into eau de vie for our brandy. But then while that was maturing, we had some leftover eau de vie, and had we done a bit more research, we would have discovered that it's not normal to distill grape wine into spirit and then use that spirit into gin. And we could have just bought the neutral ethanol, but the way we do things is we love to celebrate the vineyard where the wine comes from. We love to celebrate the raw material that is our base spirit, and we kind of highlight that in all of our products. And when it comes to gin, that eau de vie and the character and the texture and the flavor of that grape-based spirit is almost like a secret weapon for us. It's a bit of extra flavor. It's an extra layer. And yeah, that kind of is I guess what makes our products unique. But then why do we have so many gins? I mean, if someone asks me, or maybe you've got too many, maybe you should get rid of one or two, I'll be like, oh, but this one for this time of year and this one for this time of year. We've got over 10 gins. And in my mind, they're all just as important as each other. But yes, we do have a lot of products.
I would never ask you, why do you have so many gins? Because I would say, why don't you have more gins? But I can see that there's a real occasion when it comes to looking at your products that you, like you said, it can be based on, well, what do you feel like? What are you cooking? You can see that there's a gin or there's a product for kind of all of those different moods, which I absolutely love. Tell me a little bit about, and this is such a wine question, so I apologize, such a somm question to ask, but what are the varieties that you use? Are you using Trebbiano? Are you using different varieties in your eau de vies?
Yeah, so in cognac, they're all about the Uni Blanc. It's a very high acidic wine, and that's what they use to distill into their beautiful brandies. And in Australia, we decided to use what was readily accessible for us. So we use Chardonnay, little bit of Chardonnay from the Mornington Peninsula. A lot of it comes from central Victoria. So we chose a white grape variety, but a little bit different to what they do in cognac. It's fuller. It's got more fruit character to it. And then for the gin eau de vie, we use a Shiraz eau de vie. And that's just got a little bit of hints of kind of spice and kind of dark fruits. And yeah, as I said, it's like a little extra botanical almost that adds to our gin flavor profile.
That's so interesting. I did think that. I thought, we don't see a lot of Uni Blanc or Trebbiano. We don't see a lot of that in Australia. It makes sense to use something like Chardonnay. I didn't imagine that anybody in the Mornington's giving you their Chardonnay to make into spirits. So that Central Victoria makes a lot of sense. And Shiraz, having, different tannin profile and, like you said, darker spices as well. I think that that's totally fascinating. Tell me a little bit about being elected as the first female president of the Australian Distillers Association, and also about being female in this business. I know the wine industry was dominated by males. We're getting really on top of that these days. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but tell me a little bit about the reception of being female and at the head of a company like that.
Yeah. Well, firstly, just a few stats for you. So I think that the thing that we're really proud of in the spirits industry is compared to the brewing industry, where there's only about 10% of the workforce who are female, and then the wine industry, where there's about 20% of the workforce being female, the spirits industry's got around 44% of the workforce being female, which is fantastic. It's not 50%, but we're doing really well. And I think the female representation in the industry has a lot to do with the fact that the spirits industry is a lot younger, and therefore there's a real modernity around who we bring into the industry or who's coming into the industry. It's often a husband and wife duo that stepped in, and sometimes it's the wife that's the distiller. I think it's just natural because it's such a young industry and there's so many progressive minds. So I got tapped on the shoulder by the former president, male, and suggested that I put my hand up. And initially I said no. Initially I thought, I'm definitely not the most qualified on the board. Definitely suffered from a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I kind of thought about it some more, and I thought, this is something that is way outside my comfort zone, but it's also something that I think, I never wanted it to be a symbolic role, but at the same time, I think having a female president really indicated the direction that the industry was taking and the direction that the industry wanted to take, which is, celebrating women and backing women just as much as our male counterparts. And so stepping outside my comfort zone and stepping into that role, I guess I am proud that I inspired other women in doing so. That there's not a lot of women still in kind of leadership roles in our industry, and that's something that I'd really love to see change. And that was part of the reason why I pushed myself to step into that leadership role, hoping that I could inspire other women and demonstrate to other women that it's possible.
So good. I think that that's wonderful, and it sounds like you learnt a lot from that experience as well. Tell me a little bit about where Australia is kind of situated in terms of our reputation of spirits from the time that you kind of started until now.
Yeah, we're a really small industry by comparison to our international counterparts. You look at the Scotch whiskey producers, and you look at the French cognac producers, and yet, we're winning global awards. Like, I think it was just over 12 months ago or something, there was 3 Victorian producers that won. It was Curative that won the best cocktail, world's best cocktail, and Grain Shaker won world's best vodka, and Four Pillars won world's best gin. And, you think, wow, for an industry so young and so small comparatively, we're really batting above our weight. And I put that down to Australia. I think our distillers are really innovative, and we can be, because when you compare the Australian regulations to the likes of, say, cognac, they have very strict laws around what they can and can't do in the distilling world. And there's pros and cons to that. And I think the pros to having a lot of legislation, a lot of laws around production, start times, finish times, techniques, grapes, raw materials, all of that, it means that there's a minimum quality level benchmark, and that's great. It means that those countries can't put out to market poor quality spirits, and no one wants that, because that brings the whole industry down. But by comparison, our laws are very, very broad, and it really fosters a lot of innovation. And I think off the back of that, you see Australian whiskey producers and gin producers doing really interesting things with oak maturation and Australian wood and Australian oak. And, Four Pillars championed the kind of the wine gin, the Bloody Shiraz gin, and that's now become a global category. And you'll see that that's a whole new category in international spirits competitions as well. And other countries have now followed, releasing their own versions of that. But that innovation, I think that's really propelling Australian spirits producers forward very quickly. And it's really helping us to establish our name internationally with unique botanicals, unique materials and ingredients.
Yeah, amazing. And it's probably same for a lot of different drinks in Australia, and that innovation, that ability to just put whatever we kind of want to do in there. But you touched on our botanicals. Now we have like crazy amounts, thousands upon thousands, 6,000 plus native botanicals in Australia that other countries only have, hundreds. Tell me what it's like working with some of those botanicals. And, you brought up some of the spirit shows that have done well, and you're obviously a very renowned spirit judge. When you're looking at things like lemon myrtle and some of these are unique products, are you making them differently for your Australian audience as comparatively to what someone's going to drink over there? What's your approach when you're using, these wonderful botanicals that perhaps other people have never even heard of?
Great question. I think when you take your gin, for instance, onto a global stage, there's an expectation that it has something unique to bring from Australia. So I think there is an expectation of something that represents where that spirit's come from. That's the same on a really hyper local scale too. I think people increasingly are interested to know more about where their spirits have come from, who's made it, where the ingredients are sourced from. So I think not only locally but also internationally, it's probably a bit of a given now that our gins, as an example, do have a representation of some native botanicals. Interestingly, there's not a lot of gins out there that are kind of 100% native. It's often some classic gin botanicals with a sprinkle of native. And, native botanicals can be very, very strong, like really intense flavor, which is fantastic. But it's also about balance when it comes to gin. But interestingly, I remember it must be maybe 5 years ago or so now that we went to our regular Tasmanian pepperberry supplier, and there was a shortage of pepperberry because some international gin producers had discovered this native Australian botanical. They loved it. They snapped it all up. And then when we went to buy ours, they were like, sorry, we sold it all. It's all gone. And outrageous. So I think we probably have a bit of PTSD from that. And ever since then, we're always making sure we've got enough of what we need for the year and then some just in case. But yeah, I guess it's a bit of a catch-22. You want to go out there and educate and share our incredible flavors, but also you want to make sure that there's enough for you in the supply chain.
Totally. And I think, even with Tassie making quinoa and or growing things like that, we have to protect that too. And hopefully associations like the Australian Distillers Association and other associations are really harnessing that we're protecting some of those wonderful ingredients that we have and that they are getting around to the local scene before we start exporting them. That would be really tragic to hear. But I would like to know a little bit about I thought I should have asked this earlier, but for everybody out there that kind of needs a little refresher on what brandy is, can you give us a little 101 on what constitutes being able to put brandy on a label in Australia?
Yes, love to.
So I'm throwing some random questions at you, but you're just so good at speaking. So I'm giving you everything.
I love talking about brandy. Totally happy to. So by definition, brandy is actually any kind of fruit that can be fermented and then distilled into a spirit. So you can find plum brandy called Slivovitz. You can find apple brandy called Calvados. You can get cherry brandy. Obviously, you can get grape brandy. So on a label, if you just see the word brandy without any other fruit, you'll generally be able to assume that it's a grape-based brandy because that's the most common. Cognac is also brandy. It's just brandy that's been produced in the region of Cognac in France. And then, if there's you'll find that usually they'll reference the fruit if it's made from another fruit. Like we bottled and released our very first apple brandy this year, and I had to be really clear. It's not a grape-based brandy that's been infused with apple flavor. It's actually apples that we fermented into cider and then distilled into an eau de vie and then barrel aged. So that's the other thing. Brandy by law in Australia, just as is with whiskey and rum, has to be aged in oak for a minimum of 2 years, and then you can call it brandy. So before that spirit has matured into brandy, it's what we call eau de vie. That's a reference to the French term for wine that's been distilled into spirit. Yeah,
so good. I love that. Little things like that for people that want to learn or listening on the bus on their way to restaurant service or whatever. Those little snippets, they stay with you. So that's just beautiful. Thank you. Tell me, when you're coming up with new ideas, where does that kind of initiate from? Do you have a team that put forward ideas? Does it all come from you? I know with spirit judging, you must see what's out there, and maybe if you see a category that's not doing well and you think I could have a go at that, but where do the ideas for new products come from?
Yes, well, our team is very small, so I am usually the one that comes up with the new products, and so I look after new product development and also the brandy maturation and the blending. And I guess as an example, earlier this year, we released a Lamington gin. We choose to do some limited seasonal releases just for a bit of fun and just to kind of explore new flavors and a bit of research into how we can extract flavors in other ways. So I guess the concept behind that gin was releasing something for Easter and releasing something that it was a bit nostalgic for people, because I think flavor and aroma has an incredible ability to tap into people's memory bank, and that's how you can really connect with people. So it was a bit of a wild release, but it ended up doing quite well. It's got cacao and coconut and raspberries. So
you answered my question. Does it have jam inside? Because I just feel very upset if it didn't, but it does.
Definitely. That's my favorite type of Lamington. But I guess another example was the Maritime gin. So I came up with that gin a few years back now because even though we already had a lot of gins in our range, we didn't have a gin that reflected our home on the Mornington Peninsula. So I saw a little bit of a gap in our portfolio, and I gathered a whole bunch of different salty, savory botanicals. I distilled them all individually. I tasted them, and then I started blending them together to see what was working and what wasn't. And I slowly it took me about, I think, 104 iterations before I was happy with that. So, for me, whenever I start with a new gin, I start with a concept. I then get all of the different flavors that I think might work. I start putting them together and trialing them in different recipes. And then when I feel like it's got the right balance, that's when I think it's ready to release to market.
I think this whole process is fascinating. I've never ever done any kind of work in a distillery, because I think when you have raw ingredients and you have ideas, but they translate so differently in distillation, don't they? And something that you can think, wow, that smells so fresh and beautiful, can look pretty horrendous when you get to the end product, depending on whether you're stewing it or you're baking it or whatever it may be. So I think that, to be a fly on the wall and watch you do that process would be so cool. And I know that you guys do have a couple of your own kind of gin classes that you do where people can kind of come and help, which I think is really cool. And then they can buy that product at the end, can't they?
Yeah, that's right. So that's about rolling up your sleeves and tasting all the individual distillates, finding the ones that you love, blending them together in your own recipe, and then we bottle that up and you get to take that home, and we keep the recipe on file and they can reorder at any time. And funnily enough, often people think that they've made the very best gin because it's a gin that suits their own personal preference. And so everyone will think that they have produced the very best and they love it. And that's great. I've had a few people say, Holly, you better not steal our recipe. You better not take this and then release it to market. I was like, don't worry. I've got enough gins to worry about as it is. But yeah, like you were saying, I think you're absolutely right. Some botanicals, when you distill them, is worlds apart from what you would have expected the flavor and the aroma to be. And, you know, an example of that is Wattlesea. Like, I love Wattlesea because it's got a real chocolatey and coffee kind of character to it that you just wouldn't have thought before you put it through the still. So it's a constant exploration. Like you said, there's thousands and thousands of native botanicals yet to be explored. So I think, yeah, we're very much at the infancy of still discovering new Australian flavors, finding out what works and then taking that to the world.
So cool. I mean, I get so excited because there's so many of your products. I'm like, ooh, I've only had a couple of your products, but one that I was so enamored with was your cinnamon myrtle, your fire tree, which I just thought was absolutely spectacular. And I think, you know, this is maybe divisive because people have had Fireball and they make a decision based on whether they like that or not. But your product, Fire Tree, is unbelievable, so well balanced, warming. For me, it is the perfect, little drink that you put in a flask when you go skiing. It just warms you from the inside out, but it's so well balanced. And I was just totally taken with that drink because I was like, this is refined, it's elegant, it's balanced, and it's totally delicious. And I think a real Christmassy kind of gift if people are looking for that. But you also have a spiced Christmas brandy too, don't you?
Yes. I've got a little bottle here, and it happens to be almost empty because I've actually been enjoying it myself. So the spiced Christmas brandy, and by the way, I'll have to get you a bottle of Fire Tree ahead of your next key season, so you get stocked up. But yeah, the spiced Christmas brandy, the desire behind that and the concept behind that was that whenever we talk about brandy to people, they'll either talk about their grandmother drinking brandy, which is awesome, or they'll talk about brandy in relation to a Christmas pudding, because that's usually the only time Australians will buy a bottle of brandy these days. So I wanted to kind of blend Christmas with brandy. And so this is our 2-year-old brandy infused with ingredients from my grandmother's Christmas pudding recipe. So it's got clove, nutmeg, vanilla, orange peel, dried fruits of cranberries, currants, all of that infused into brandy. So it definitely tastes like Christmas pudding in a glass, and you can kind of drink it with your Christmas pudding.
I love that idea. And I specifically like that because I'm not a huge sweet tooth, but my favorite sweet dessert ever is Christmas pudding. And I think, again, it's the nostalgia. It's my grandmother used to make it. It's the boiled one that takes far too long to make. But often, people choose a fortified or something to have with that, and it's sweet on sweet. So I love this idea because I think that little kind of nightcap or afternoon cap, or whenever you're going to have it, along with something sweet, but that lovely little sipping kind of drink that's not overtly sweet over the top sounds right up my alley. So I really encourage people listening that if you've got a few people you need to buy for, don't just always go for the same things. Support our industry, support the spirits that we have, because we have such an array, and particularly small businesses. So go and buy them from their website. I know you're going to get inundated, and maybe we're too close to Christmas to get things out yet. I'm not sure. But it would be really nice if people supported small businesses and went straight to their website. Or is that the best way to get your products from you guys?
Yeah, website or our distillery door as well.
Fabulous. And in terms of other places that you're located, where else could people perhaps look at some of your products? Are they in other retailers?
Yes. We've got a couple of our gins in Dan Murphy's, and the Liquorland, Vintage Cellars that was rebranded. So yeah, we're in some retailers in Victoria. Outside of that, in New South Wales, where I think you're based, probably online is the best. Yeah.
So cool. And you've got a lovely little a little gift pack of gins as well, which I think is nice because even if you need to buy it and split it up, for me, they're like great little stocking stuffers, or I usually buy bits of those and then go, I need something else for that friend. And I'm like, oh, a little bottle of gin's perfect. So get online and support Holly and what she does. Holly, what is the best part of your job?
Oh, the best part of my job, I think, is that no 2 days are the same. Like, you know, today I'm talking to you and tomorrow I've got to pull together another brandy blend. And yeah, I think it's a really exciting industry to be a part of, and I love being a part of this industry. It's small, it's collaborative, it's supportive, and I know that if I run out of filters, I can go down the road to Jimmy Rum and ask to borrow some, or if I need some advice about bottling machines, I can speak to the guys at Chief Sun Whiskey. I think what I love the most about my job is just being part of something bigger and working towards increasing people's perceptions of Australian brandy and Australia's perceptions of gin. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, you are such a powerhouse, but you are incredibly friendly, so down to earth, and yet so talented. It's just remarkable, I think, what you've created for this brand. And I think that your father would be incredibly proud of what you've done. I do have one more question, and that is, if you had 3 drinks for the rest of your life today, what are they going to be?
Oh, wow. 3. That's great. At least you didn't say 1.
No, it's too hard.
Okay. So my favorite cocktail is called a Vieux Carré. I don't know if you've had that. Mm-hmm. But I have that with all brandy. It's usually a blend of brandy and whiskey. So that one, it's kind of, I find it a bit of a less bitter version of a Negroni. So love that one. And then I need something a bit sessionable, so I'd probably choose a brandy and tonic. Don't know if you've tried that, but
no.
often people go for a brandy and dry ginger ale, but I usually go for a brandy and tonic most nights. Summertime drink, awesome. And then it's got to be a gin cocktail. I'd probably say a martini, just something elegant and crisp and refreshing. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. In fact, martini I've had before, but the other 2 are the first time. So I love that. And I will have a brandy and tonic at some point. I'll have to go and scrape down and see if I have any good brandy. Shame on me, I may not. But I think that's really, really cool. How do you feel about a brandy Alexander? Are we gross, or are we each their own?
Look, each to their own. Not my brandy cocktail of choice. Bit rich for me. But yeah, if that's your thing, totally go for it.
if it gets people drinking brandy, hey, right?
Hell yeah.
Holly, you are such a delight. I've just had a lovely day chatting to you. Lovely day. It's only been half an hour, but it's been a total delight, half an hour.
Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to chat to you.
So good. Cheers to you.
Thanks.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.